welcome back to another Wings of Fire video. Today we are doing a Wings of Fire what if video. Quick disclaimer, this is not my idea. If you want to see the ideas of the original creators are in the description below. Thank you for listening. Just so you know, I haven't read these books in a decent amount of time. So if I might not get timelines or the dates exactly correct, or everything that happened correctly, or all of Darkstalker and Clearsight or Fathom's features. So let's get started. This took a really long time to write, but I really like how it turned out, and I hope you like my drawing in the background. All right, let's get started. Here is what if Darkstalker never got defeated. Clearsight took his talons in hers. Isn't it wonderful? She asked, obviously stalling. Why am I here? Darkstalker asked mad. Stop stalling and tell me, he said, calling her out. He whipped his tail back and forth. Tears welled in her eyes. Goodbye, my love, and slid her bracelet over to his forearm. Was something supposed to happen? Now he was confused and angry, but mostly angry. It didn't work, he called out, still not knowing what the plan was, but he was mad. He looked at Clearsight and saw a shocked look on her face. Now that the bracelet was off, he could hear her thoughts. It didn't work, her mind kept saying over and over. It was quite boring, actually. It's not that bad that it didn't work, he said angrily. He should punish her, he thought bitterly. He couldn't bring himself to hurt her, though. Tears welled in her eyes. Was she expecting pity? He chuckled bitterly. Don't you see what happened to you? Clearsight cried. Maybe the scroll was destroying his soul, she thought. It's not destroying my soul, he screamed. She looked surprised. She was sobbing now. He felt bad for her, but he didn't show that. He took her talons in his. This is for us. We could live our best life together. Her tears seemed to slow. She was believing him. But why was he surprised? He was very convincing. She looked actually genuinely believed. He couldn't believe it. He held out his talon. Come with me. She looked overwhelmed, and now he was feeling really guilty. But she was on her side. That's all that matters. He tried to comfort her. This leads to the best path, he said, begging it to be true. She didn't confirm, but didn't deny it either. Now give me my scroll, he said gently, not wanting to spook her and have her fly away or not obey him. She reached out of her pouch carefully and took out this scroll. She stared at it for a moment, thinking, should I do this? But then she made up her mind and handed it to him. He placed his talon on her shoulder and smiled. He set the scroll down carefully, and before she could change her mind and steal it back, he lit it on fire. He felt his animus magic seeping back to him. The first thing he did was enchant Clearsight. I enchant Clearsight to always support me and love me no matter what I do or as I say. No questions asked. Clearsight flew in silence for a while, but then Darkstalker stepped up and said something. Clearsight, he said eventually, this is all for you. I love you, he said. Anger burned in his chest, but he still loved her genuinely. I love you too, she said. I know this is the best path, she said, smiling. I see it. She gave him a huge smile. He offered his friendliest smile back. When his talons touched down on the cool stage, the wind seemed strong. It tried to rip him off the stage, but he gripped it strongly. Goosebumps formed along his tail. But he was too mad to care. He saw fleeing night wings. Why did they fear him? They should love him, he thought, sad for their loss. He summoned everyone back, furious. You, he pointed at some random nightwing. I intend you to search all over the continent to find Fathom. When you do, you will teleport back to me. He bowed his head and took off. He whisked around to stare at the stage at his father. He lay dead, ice-wing blood everywhere, still stained his claws. He smiled furiously at the direction of his father. Everyone would call him Psycho, but he didn't mind. He was staring. The wood was starting to stain a dark blue, a deep royal blue. He started flying, not wanting to touch the blood. Looking back at the crowded dragons. They looked terrified. Most of the dragons crouched or kept their heads down and wings back, trying to look small and harmless. He loved how terrified they were. Even if they were terrified, that's better than fleeing and afraid. They should love him. He was mighty. He destroyed the Ice Wing and finally giving them something fair. And they're scared? He smiled bitterly. Finally, the future I want is here, he thought excitedly. Excitement prickled through his scales. He was almost dancing. He knew which spell to cast next. I enchant every Nightwing and every tribe to accept me as their king and listen to everything I say without questions. Clearsight watched in horror as Darkstalker took over. There was no stopping him. She loved her, and she didn't want to love him, but she did. Why? She didn't have a choice. She didn't have any options, but she couldn't do anything without options. Couldn't have her own thoughts, her own life, but this was the life she chose. There was no going back. She can finish that thought. She kept looking towards the future, desperately searching for a good one. But this is all it was from here. An endless cycle for the next millions and millions of years till dragon existence got wiped out. Darkstalker would be the king of everything. He rather quickly took over the mud, ice, sky, rain, sand, and sea kingdoms. He killed each of the queens and possible heirs. He loved the thrill. Time after time again, he gained more power, defeating each of their queens. He was the king and Clearsight the queen. Clearsight stuck by his side the whole time, not wanting to, though it's not like she had a choice. After a while, they accepted him as his king and as the king. He moved into the old queen bedroom. He asked the servant to clean it. It was disgusting. He was not stepping in there anywhere the queen was. After a while, he perfected the shape of his crown. It was a silver piece of metal that spiraled into sharp points. There would be a big black diamond in the middle. Clearsight thought it was gorgeous, so he made her a slightly smaller one to fit her head. Instead of a black diamond, hers was purple instead. She loved this one too. Actually more, since she loved the color purple. Once they were finished, he studied the room. There was a huge window that had silver curtains that looked like it had been painted in moonlight and sprinkled with stars. There was a ledge so any dragon could lay and read scrolls or do anything by the window. The room was tall, could probably fit 10 full-grown dragons stacked on top of each other. The walls was a galaxy, had a black backdrop, but it had pinks and blues and purples splattered all over it. There was a round moon and two other ones that shone brightly on the top left of the wall. More stars splattered the wall. He turned around to find a silver vanity that faded into black edges. There was a mirror. Turned around. There was a mirror that sat right in front of the vanity. He looked at his reflection. His silver scales glowed in the moonlight. There was an oddly big fountain. It was the only thing in the room that was boring and not demanding attention. It was a boring and dull gray. The carving was boring too. It was a Nightwing shooting water, not exactly the thing that screamed, "Hey, I am different. Notice me. Fear me." But there was a spear in his hand. It looked triumphant. It was unsettling. The canopy bed was by the window. Silver mesh fell from the top of the bed. The pillows again looked like they were dipped in moonlight. The sheets looked the same as the pillows, and a painting of the old Nightwing Queen hung above the bed. And the Queen loved it. He thought it was rather ugly, with gold and red frame, and the picture looked worn and old. There was a neat scroll rack next to the bed that neatly held about 20 scrolls, he guessed. The floor was a cool stone. He yelped when he stepped off the star-speckled rug. After a while, he tried to sleep, but couldn't. When he slept, he felt like he was missing out on something. So he went to the vanity and sat down. He pulled out a blank scroll and grabbed ink holders. He went onto the balcony. He sat down and stared at the star-speckled sky for a while. The three moons were full again. He stared at the sky. The moons seemed to make him more powerful. He loved it. He felt the winds shift through his wings, threatening to lift him up again, but it didn't. He held onto the scroll tightly, not letting it fly away. It was warmer out here than it was in there. He clutched the silver balcony. He looked down below. There was the gorgeous gardens below, probably perfect for picnics. He and Clearsight would love this. He let his mind drift. He imagined him and Clearsight running in the gardens, having picnics, eating fish, talking about their dragonette names. He was so excited for his dragonettes. What would he name them? Clearsight probably knew. He didn't want to look down that path. He wanted to be a surprise. He finally set the scroll down and put the inks on the corners to keep it down. He sat down and started designing Clearsight's room. It was almost exactly like him, but he muttered to himself for a little bit. Nope, that fountain's gotta go, he'd say stuff like that. For what felt like hours. He just sat out there. After a while, he decided to stop. He decided to go for a quick fly. He jumped off the balcony and flew around the palace. The palace felt so much more grand. Maybe that he lifted up a few more stories, but it looked so much better. Maybe that he was king. Everything was turning up from here. He finally believed what he's doing was good. After a while, he went back into his room and sat on the little window ledge. Everything became real. He was the most powerful dragon in Pyria. Speaking of the power, he grabbed the stick he brought from flying outside a few days earlier. When the twig snapped, I enchanted every animist in Pyria to die, except me and Fathom. When he was done with the spell, he was quite proud of it. You wanted to see the look on Fathom's face. He smiled gruesomely. He entered the throne room the next morning. It was colder in there. Cooler than other parts of the castle. Every few steps there were pillars jutting up from the floor with intricate designs. Again, the room could fit 10 full-grown dragons, Nightwing stacked on top of each other. There was a huge throne on the stage. He felt the cool stone on his talons. The gold was a shiny silver with purple cushions. It's gorgeous, right? Clearsight asked, entering behind him. I like it, he said as he wheeled his head around to look at Clearsight. Her face smiled back at him sweetly. He loved her with all his heart. He had an easy time adjusting to his role as king. Everyone wanted to be around him and talk to him. He was important, but he was still greedy. He was hungry for more. He ruled the whole continent, but he wanted more. It didn't satisfy him. Maybe he needed to punish someone. He flicked his claw to bring in an ice ring. He looked beside him and saw Clearsight smiling back on the throne he had made for her. I made the right choice, he thought triumphantly. Suddenly an ice wing came trotting in. He bowed his head. He looked terrified. The ice wing's talons were quivering slightly. He kept his wings back to make himself look less harmful. He still held a grudge for all the ice wings, for what they did to his mother, he thought sadly and angrily. Darkstalker flicked his talons. The ice wing fell over. Blue blood splattered everywhere. His fears had come alive, the ice wings. Your Majesty, someone said in a low voice. He guessed it was a Nightwing, because Nightwings are the only one who dared to talk to him. I think I found your sea wing. And there was standing right before him was his traitorous best friend. Could he even call him his best friend anymore? His green and blue scales flickered with the dim lighting in the room. What you're doing is awful, Fathom cried. I thought you were my friend, Darksucker said. Red rimmed his vision. That's how much he hated Fathom now. Well, just in case you don't know, friends don't turn your girlfriend against you and try to kill you. He slashed his tail. He looked at Fathom dead in the eyes. "Next time, don't betray me," he said, smiling bitterly. The look on Fathom's face was hilarious. The cold room seemed even colder. Fathom started shaking. His eyes darted around the room. He twisted and squirmed, trying to escape, but the guards held him tight. The blank walls were spinning. He was finally rid of all his enemies. "No, Clearsight, please help me," Fathom cried. "Don't you dare bring Clearsight into this," he said, protectively spreading his wings to shield her. "You already heard her once," he roared. The sound vibrated off the bland room. "Fathom, you tried to hurt Darkstalker," Clearsight jumped in. "You tricked me. If anything, you're wrong," she continued. "Darkstalker knew it was good," he enchanted her. "You enchanted your girlfriend," Fathom said, almost guessing his thoughts. He said sadly, I would never," Darkstalker said. He lied, but of course he did. He smiled, and with a flick of his claw, Fathom was gone. Nope, still wasn't satisfied. He wanted so much more. Clearsight, "You know how you always talked about the lost continent?" he asked, loving his brilliant idea. She was still staring blankly at Fathom, but she quickly snapped her head in his direction and nodded. "Do you know how to get there?" He asked, ready for more power. Time to rule the whole earth. It's a long trip, 2 or 3 days. But yes, I know how to get there. Now we know where we're going next. We'll set off tomorrow at sunrise. He was so ready for the thrill of taking over more tribes and land. That night he couldn't sleep, so he sat in the throne room reading till sunrise. "Dear," Clearsight said eventually in a tired voice, ready to go. He did not want to wait any longer. He nodded once her shape came in. Ready. She nodded once her shape came into view. The flight was very long, but not that bad. All I think about was ruling the continent. His crown swayed in the breeze. Finally, he ruled all tribes. No one could defeat him. He would live forever. Like before, he took over the other tribes. Now, with ease, ruling both continents. 3,000 years later, Moon walked the hall. She couldn't wait to meet the king. She was told his name was Darkstalker. She was told he was mighty and powerful and handsome, and all the girls swooned over him. Moon thought it was weird. He was much older than them. She entered the throne room and bowed. She quivered, so nervous to meet the mighty and strong king. Well, at least that's what everyone said. Talons and tails, the floor was cold. She squeaked and considered to start flying, but managed not to. She shriveled when his voice said, "Hello, little moon." She was startled and felt small, but managed to squeak out, "Morning, your majesty." She wished her mother was here. She was petrified. She met one of his son's gaze. He smiled shyly. "Call me Darkstalker."